So this video is the second segment in what I wanted to share regarding my sense of what the key two aspects of faith are. And in the last video, I've been focusing on this little book, the Jodo Shinshu book, for the purpose of these videos in this series. And in the last video, it ended with a focus on the question of what the computer indicated was the greatest problem we face. Well, whether it comes from the computer or not, this is the perspective of the authors of this little Shin Buddhist book, is that the greatest problem, and that we should focus on the greatest problem first rather than on the easier problems in our life, is that the greatest problems are: one, what is the reason this person known as I was born? Upon what should I base my life? And third, what happens when my physical body disappears? And again, just to refresh you, is that my basic notion here, or the basic notion here, which I don't claim ownership of, I'm getting this from the Buddha Dharma, the Buddhist teachings, is that there are a variety of approaches to pursuing a spiritual path. I was speaking with a friend of mine just this morning about the fact that, in a sense, there are as many approaches as there are individuals. We break belief systems or approaches down into various religions or denominations or churches or temples. But in reality, when we think about the teaching of the Lotus Sutra about the expedient means, the Buddha, if you want to think in terms of a cosmic Buddha, whether it be Amida or Vairocana or whatever, ultimate supreme Buddha, or as the Baha'is call it, the unknowable essence, is that we're constantly being taught, in the sense we constantly have opportunities to learn, and each of us gets lessons, if you will, that are in accordance with what our own personalities require. So that would boil down to as many approaches as there are beings. But, in terms of the Buddhist canon, you hear talk within the teaching about 84,000 methods. Okay, that boils it down to 84,000. Well, you can boil it down further in some ways, down to 3. You can boil it down to an approach that involves virtues, in other words, following the precepts. And if you're a monk or a nun within Buddhism, it's more than just the 5 precepts. It's a large number. I don't know how many, a couple 300 maybe precepts, different rules. The Vinaya is what it's called, I think, in the Tripitaka, which is the 3-component teaching within the Pali Canon, or the earlier form of Buddhism. But the point is, by following these many precepts, one can attain ongoing refinement of one's personality in the direction of bodhisattvahood or Buddhahood or arhatship. And then a second would be meditation, a second major approach to get in touch with prajna, or wisdom. Now, meditation is part of the earlier form of Buddhism as far as the Eightfold Path, and it's also, of course, a key approach within the Bodhisattva path in terms of the 6 paramitas. The 5th one is meditation, which to my mind leads to the 6th, which is prajna, or wisdom. The Zen Buddhism, or it was known in China as Chan Buddhism, I think the word maybe in Sanskrit is dhyana, or which means meditation. It's the meditation approach. So both in the Theravadan school and in some forms of Mahayana Buddhism, meditation is a key approach to following the spiritual path. But as was articulated all through the lineage of the patriarchs within Shin Buddhism, or Jodo Shinshu, or true Pure Land Buddhism, is that there are a lot of people that don't have the capability, or whose life circumstances are not such that they can follow one of these 2 earlier forms of spiritual pursuits, which Nagarjuna, I think, originally called the holy path, or the path of sages, as contrasted with an easy path. And that's the third major kind of approach, which is the path that involves faith. So the question here is, what constitutes faith? And again, the premise I'm putting forward is that the two key components are, on the one hand, an acute awareness of our own limitations, as far as being able to follow precepts, being able to, meditate consistently, being able to understand the profound teachings. So our own limitations, our own defilements, our own flaws, to be aware of that in combination with or simultaneous with an awareness of the profound altruism and idealism of the Buddha and his, if you want to think of it as his acceptance of us. And the way I think of it is Amida Buddha accepts me just as I am. So on the one hand, I'm aware of my limitations and defilements, but even in spite of those, Amida accepts me just as I am. So I want to go on reading in this little Jodo Shinshu book, and let's see what the authors of this book have to say along these lines as it goes on. Quote, "It is quite possible to live without faith. I am proof of that statement. I live a life which does no one any harm and which no one can point an accusing finger at. This being the case, why do I have to have faith?" Close quote. This is a good question. That is why someone asked it of the Buddha. A good question deserves a good answer. But rather than giving a crushing logical refutation to this question, the Buddha told a simple, easy-to-understand story. Once there was a hawk. During the fall months it captured insects and frogs, and hid them in preparation for winter. Since this hawk was not very intelligent, it used a cloud as a landmark to locate the hiding place. Quote, "If I come to this tree located under that round-shaped cloud," it thought, "I will be able to find my store of food for the winter." When winter came, the hawk went looking for the cloud under which it thought its store of food was located. Since clouds do not stay in one place, however, the hawk could not find the store and it went hungry. His point was that if you base your life on something that is impermanent, your life will be a failure. But it seems as if everything we rely upon in life changes. Our physical body, it becomes ill and injured. It becomes old and senile. Wealth, it may increase, but it may also decrease. Family, unfortunately, they collectively suffer the same fate as our bodies individually. Science cannot replace religion. There are those who believe that if science continues to advance, there will be less need of religion. They look with wonder at the constant progress of science and technology and feel that the time will come when everything will be capable of being understood in scientific terms. They thus find it easy to conclude that since even the finest instruments are not able to detect it, there cannot be a Buddha or a world of reality, the Pure Land. However, this point of view can quickly be shown to be false. Those who believe that science can explain everything still have the problems of stubborn parents, disobedient children, or that they do not enjoy their work. Science will not help their indignation when they hear about things such as the Watergate affair or the inhumanity of the atomic bomb. All these problems are outside the sphere of science. It is impossible for science and religion to encroach the area of the other. Arthur Rubinstein is probably the world's greatest pianist, and George Foreman the world's greatest boxer. This is in 1973. But it would be meaningless to put them in competition with each other to determine who is greater. However, our life is based on religious consciousness, the world of the heart. Have you ever been tormented by the law of gravity, or the law that governs the refraction of light? Suffering arises because man's joy and anger, his grief and pleasure, have no connection with science. A true scientist is very much aware of this. Hideki Yukawa, a Nobel Prize winner in physics, said, quote, A scientist who believes that science is all there is not a first-rate scientist, close quote. Is it correct to say that something does not exist simply because it cannot be seen with our eyes and cannot be measured with the most precise instruments? Can we say that because love cannot be measured that therefore it does not exist? No. When love is expressed, it results in an act which can be seen and move those who see it. Although the Buddha's desire, which is the causal vow, and the Buddha's world, which is the Pure Land, cannot be seen with human eyes, they exist. They exist in my heart. They are expressed in my faith, which moves me, and this can not only be seen, but have great influence. The characters in children's cartoons on television make use of the most advanced sort of technology. A rocket ship is as commonplace a device as an automobile is today. Every convenience is available by merely pushing a button. But the most used devices in these cartoons are the atomic ray guns to fight superhuman monsters and other enemies. In these cartoons, with their far-out characters, good is clearly pitted against evil. They symbolically demonstrate that even in the most scientifically advanced society that we can conceive, hostility, injustice, anxiety, and all the problems that we are confronted with today will still be with us. If anything, they will be magnified because of the technological advances. Rather than a pistol bullet, we must contend with a death ray. Rather than a dynamite blast, an atomic explosion. The fact that we will be dead in either case is small consolation. This is indeed something for us all to ponder. The Buddha was born in India 566 years before the modern era. Buddha Dharma was discovered by this historical Buddha, and the sermons which he gave expressing his findings were transmitted orally for hundreds of years before they were written down and preserved in their present form, which we call sutras, now the common heritage of all people. We used the word, quote, discovered to relate the teaching of the Buddha with the Buddha himself. This is because Buddha Dharma is not something the Buddha created after speculating on the matter. Rather, he discovered the law which runs through the universe, and, what is most important, experienced it in his own life. This is why he is called the Buddha, which means the enlightened one. In this sense, the law of Buddha Dharma, which he discovered, is similar to the laws of nature. The law of gravity was discovered by Isaac Newton. But even if Newton did not discover the law which shows the relationship between two masses, that law would still be in effect and control the movement of all things in the universe. The one way in which the, quote, law of Buddha Dharma differs from natural law is that the Buddha Dharma discovered by the Buddha was specifically an answer to the question, quote, how do I overcome my present suffering? The Buddha expressed his discovery in logical systemizations, which we today call the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path. They are further expressed in other very sophisticated doctrinal formulations, but basic to all these formulations is, quote, the law of cause and effect, which can be said to be the distinctive feature of what the Buddha discovered. If you are injured. Let us suppose a person is injured by a piece of machinery while at work. In this unfortunate circumstance, that person will probably take one of the following attitudes regarding his injury. 1, he will go to a doctor to have his injury taken care of, and then wonders if he will get some compensation for his injury. 2, then he will probably think about the cause of his injury, that he should have been a little more careful when he was using the machine, or that the setup was bad, or that the machine was not designed well, etc. 3. Among those who may be injured will be those who will believe their injury was due to the fact that they had just walked under a ladder or that it was Friday the 13th. Because of the recent revival of interest in the occult, some may believe their injury was due to a curse wished on them by their enemy. 4. Some will feel that life is a struggle and that their injury is just one more thing they will have to put up with. 5. Then you must consider the future, how to pay for the medical treatment, the reaction on your work and home life, etc. What does the Buddha teach us? What would the Buddha suggest in a case such as described above? In a very well-known story, known as the parable of the poisoned arrow, the Buddha taught, suppose you are suddenly struck by a poisoned arrow. The members of your family, relatives, and close friends crowd around and make arrangements to remove the arrow and apply an antidote to the poison. But what would happen if you stopped them, saying, "Wait! Before you remove the arrow, I must know what sort of a person would do a thing like this to me. I must know whether the person who shot it was a male or a female. I must also know how the bow and arrow were made and the type of poison used. Do not remove the arrow unless you can explain these things to me." If you took such an attitude, it is obvious that the poison would gradually seep through your body and that you would die. Similarly, there is no time to ask what the structure of the universe is, whether we have an immortal soul, or whether a Buddha exists or not. First, pull out the arrow, tend to your wound, and then you may speculate on these matters if you wish. But the answer to these speculations is in no way connected with healing your wound. Proper treatment or cause results in healing or effect. We have just presented an example in terms of an injury. But if you should happen to incur an injury or become ill, you must trust your doctor. Although the study of medicine has progressed a great deal in comparison with an absolute standard of healing, there is still much to learn. However, since healing is the specialized study of doctors, you must trust their judgment. When the Buddha became ill, he was cared for by Biba, the Lord of Healing. Although we are all willing to endure the pain of a dentist drill in order to fill a cavity in our teeth, we feel no similar compulsion to seek specialized help in filling the cavity in our heart. Those with incomplete spiritual lives, who are gifted mentally and physically, are worse off than those who are not so gifted, because they will use their talents to fill the emptiness. This works to a certain degree, but it will never carry you to enlightenment. If your body becomes injured or ill, it will raise a temperature and show other symptoms of illness. If your spiritual heart becomes injured or ill, it will also develop symptoms: greed, anger, and a complaining attitude. These are symptoms all of us have. We must seek the care of and receive the treatment prescribed by the doctor of the heart, the Buddha. The law of cause and effect. All things, without exception, arise from a direct cause which comes in contact with the proper conditions. This is referred to as conditional causation and must be taken into account in order to arrive at a correct decision. The simplest way to understand conditional causation is through an example. A flower will bloom only after the seed, which is the direct cause, comes in contact with soil, water, light, etc., the proper conditions. Only then will a beautiful flower blossom, which is the result. If either the direct cause, the seed, or the proper conditions, soil, water, light, etc., is absent, the result, the flower, will not come into being. According to the Buddha, conditional causation means, quote, seeing things as they are. Seeing things as they are means understanding that if we work at it hard enough, something will come of it. It also means giving up manfully and with good grace when we see that no amount of contriving will bring about the result we seek. In Japanese, this seeing things as they are is often referred to as accepting things as being shikata ga nai, or it can't be helped. The positive aspect is seeing what must be done and getting up and doing it. The true Buddhist's attitude is to always determine what the cause is, what the conditions are, and then strive to, quote, see things as they really are. Recovering even stronger from a fall. To constantly brood over the same thing is not good for you. Let us give up cleanly those things that we can. When you cannot give something up, be prepared or resolved to suffer. However, if misfortune or reversals should occur, don't just cry about it. Transform your misfortune so you may again stand up before the world. This is the attitude the Buddha taught. An oyster creates a pearl. How? While at the bottom of the ocean, it accidentally takes in a foreign particle, sand, or even a small piece of rock. The foreign particle hurts the oyster, so it tries to expel it. In most cases, the oyster succeeds. However, there are times when the sharp edges of the foreign particle become embedded in the soft, fleshy part of the oyster's insides, and the oyster finds it impossible to expel. What does the oyster do then? The oyster resigns itself to the foreign particle remaining inside its shell. To relieve the pain, it begins to secrete a substance which envelops the sharp edges. Over and over again, it surrounds the foreign particle with its secretions until the sharp edges are smoothed and become round. The result is a beautiful pearl. Aren't there similarities in your own life? In our culture, those with easy-to-injure hearts gather and live together. Every day, foreign particles which hurt the heart enter in. The usual heartaches are expelled after sleeping on it for a night. There are times, however, when we are confronted with a problem that we just cannot expel. Try as we may, we are not able to forget the hurt it is causing within us. What can we do at times like that? Do what the oyster does. If there is no way of expelling the foreign particle, it must be endured. However, rather than leaving the wound as it is, there is a way of transforming this foreign particle into a pearl. This way is what is taught in Buddha Dharma, and more specifically in the Nembutsu teaching, about which we will speak at great length later. Buddha Dharma does not teach you to run away from misfortune. There is no place where you can run which is far enough away to avoid it. The Nembutsu is not a teaching which stresses the Pure Land in the future in order to make you forget the hurt of today. Buddha Dharma is not a teaching which merely urges you to accept things and endure them the best you can. What the Buddha taught was a way which allows you to live strongly and independently at all times, whether during those few moments in our lives when we are elated at our triumph, whether during the 90% or so of our lives when we live a humdrum existence, or whether during those moments of despair that enter into all of our lives. In the simple and artless expression of an anonymous ancient Japanese, quote, "Don't let anything stick to you." That is, don't let anything get you down. The conditions are always right for those who have something immovable to associate themselves with. They don't let anything, quote, stick into them. They may meet hardships and incur serious illnesses, but the spirit to meet these adversities arises naturally and without effort. When the law of cause and effect is clearly seen, and a foundation for us to build is established, we are on our way. Buddha Dharma is not only the teachings of the Buddha, it is the way for us to become a Buddha. As a Buddhist, we must always keep our eyes on the ideal and diligently pursue the way. So that's about halfway through the book, maybe a little less than halfway, and what it's going to get into next are our materials on more specifically Shin Buddhism, what we can learn from Shinran, and teachings about the Nembutsu. Again, this is a book that's somewhat dated in terms of some aspects of it, but I think the teaching is worthwhile, and I hope you get something out of it. particularly as we think about what are the key aspects of faith and also about the importance of faith.